Hey, it's Ben Hassel here, and here we're going to have a look at how we sync three cameras up. So basically we have 1, 2, and 3 cameras. So one is on my iPhone, which is this camera over here, one is on my Sony camera, and one is on my laptop. So basically we're going to use the sound and also the clap that I just made to sync it up. And we're going to have a look at the technicalities in Adobe Premiere Pro of how we actually sync up these 3 videos, and let's go.
So basically each of these clips, at a certain point I've clapped in here. I'm not going to play back the sound on the speakers, but you'll hear the clap there. You can just play it back quietly. So there's a clap, and I've just matched the in point here. So in the clip I've marked an in point for each clip on that second clap. Okay, so you can see the second clap, and we can mark an in point there, and that's what we're going to use to sync up the multi-camera. So on the second clip, we've done the same thing already. So I've got 2 claps, okay, recording at the same time. We've marked an in point here with that clap. So the third one here, same thing. So kind of wider angle, 2 claps, and just I've marked an in point at that second clap. Okay, so if you want to find the clap, like when the hands kind of join, then you can move forwards and backwards by holding down K and tapping J to get that right spot. Okay, so you can see the other 2 cameras that I'm recording on here in the shot. Once that's done, we can select all these clips. We're going to use the Sony camera as camera 1 to use for the audio. So you'll see how we set that up. So if we right click here and go to create multi-camera source sequence, we'll get a little window that pops up and asks us to kind of sync up in different ways. So we can use the audio to sync up, but you can also use the in points to do it as well. So you can set the in points like we just did on the second clap, and it will sync up. And then down here we've got the audio option. So we're going to use camera 1 as our audio, and we don't need to change any of this. So basically I've also set up the source to be DSLR 1080p at 30 frames per second to kind of manage that. There is one clip in here that's 720p, so we'll see that when we actually set up the multi-camera clip, and we can give it a name and stuff, but we don't necessarily need to. So your camera 1 will effectively be your audio track. That's what you want to use for your kind of audio here. Okay, so if we double click here now, so we can see camera 1 is here, and that's the audio track. So now when we play this back in this window, we're going to have a look at how we sync 3 cameras up. So basically we have 1, 2, and 3 cameras. So okay, so you can see they're moving at the same time. And then there's a couple of other things to set up when we actually get our clip onto the timeline. So this is our multi-camera sequence. You can see the different icon on the bottom right there, and we can drag that down to the timeline, and we can see the audio tracks down here. So basically there's a couple of extra tools we need to add to this toolbar to be able to do the kind of live multi-camera editing. Okay, so on the bottom right of our toolbar you can see there's a little plus. We can click there, and then we need to drop down these 2 buttons, the record multi-camera option down to here, and also the multi-camera option. So we can drag those down and then click OK, and now you can see we've got those at the bottom here. So when we toggle this on after we've dragged our multi-camera clip onto the timeline, we can click here, and now when we play back, just leave the sound off for this for the moment, as it's playing back, when we want to start actually editing, we would press record and then press play with space, and then we can move between the different cameras as we're editing. Okay.
Can you do it not live? Like, can you have it so that you pause it and then decide it's right here when I want it to switch?
You can, yeah. So basically now I'm recording it live, so when I pause this, I actually get cuts from those different cuts that I made. But if I want to swap this clip out, and as long as the playhead is hovering over that, I can switch it. Okay. I can also use the blade tool here. So if I want to add an edit there, I can add a blade, and then just make sure the playhead is over one or other of those clips. So you might want to zoom in or use the up and down cursors to make sure you're on the right clip. And now when I swap it, it will swap on that new clip to there. So basically, we can now edit between those. Now when you do the multi-camera edit like this, when we actually want to modify these edit points, we don't want to have the blade on all the time. We want to be using the ripple, sorry, not the ripple edit tool. We don't want to be using the ripple edit tool. We want to be using the rolling edit tool to move those edit points. And the reason is if we use the ripple edit tool, then we're going to move everything out of sync wherever we ripple. So basically, if we zoom in here now, I think at one point I kind of say which cameras I'm using. So got cameras, 3 cameras, camera 1 over there. So I'm gonna, when I point to camera 1, I'm gonna use the blade tool and go back to my selection tool briefly, and then I can swap that. So when I move to camera 1, and actually I've bladed this as well, which I don't want to do. So I'm just gonna go back and lock these audio tracks so that we don't blade them by accident. So basically, if I blade here, okay, then I can swap this angle to using the selection tool to be this camera, and I haven't quite got the edit in the right spot, so I want my edit to be more over here. So when I kind of point my finger towards this camera, so I'm going to use the rolling edit tool to move that edit back. Okay, so you can see nothing moves except that edit point. So now when I press play, got one camera, and then my second camera is over here, so I can roll this back. So now I go 1, 2, and 3, and we'll roll this one back so that we're kind of pointing at the different cameras. Now one thing I should have done before I did this, I'm not sure how this works in Premiere, is you can see this clip has a black border around it, the others 2 are 1080. So this clip and this clip, this is playing back at 720p, which is why it's that smaller frame size here. So if we come to our multi-camera clip, we can right click and open this up in the timeline. Okay, it says, oh no, I've selected the wrong one. This one. Open in timeline, and then I can see my 3 different clips and how they've synced up. Okay, so now if I turn off the top layer here, just with the eyeball, you can see this second layer is the one that's too small. So if I right click on here and go set frame, scale to frame size, it will increase it, and now it's going to fill that frame. Okay, I'll just turn this back on. And so now this is the bit where I'm not sure, will it have fixed it here? Yeah, so we can make a change back in the multi-camera edit, and that will flow through to the edit that we've already made, which is nice because I believe, and this is how it works in Final Cut Pro as well, if we open up our timeline for the multicam, if we want to do, say, some color correction on one of these clips, we can do it here, and those color corrections should, let's test it, flow through to the rest of the timeline. So I'm just gonna, let's desaturate this a little bit. Let's just completely desaturate it and see if it works. So now let's see if that desaturation has flowed through to our edit, which it has. So you can see I've gone in and color corrected the clip in the original multi-camera timeline, and then that edit has flowed through. So we can edit and then go back to that multi-camera edit, and any changes we make will be modified throughout the entire timeline. So wherever that clip appears, it's going to be in black and white. So these 2 buttons are important if you want to do the live editing, but you can also edit up here as well in not live. So we can, actually we need to gang these together before we do that. So there we go, we have to close the multi-camera editor here to be able to gang this to the source window here, but now that will work as an editor. So you can use one or the other as an option. Okay.